We want to see righteousness reign. We want to see people getting along with one another, being kind to one another, putting each other first, people in their marriages loving each other well. And while we can rejoice where we see evils disappear, freedom reigning, prosperity achieved, and human kindness extended to the world, those things might be the fruit of conversion, but then again, they might not. There is only one thing that can bring about true and not false fruit, and that is the new birth from God. Only the power of Jesus, only, as Jesus told his opponents here earlier in the passage, the finger of God can truly make a man's house into a house of the Lord. The Jewish exorcists and man's religions, all they do is cast out one demon, sweep it, put it in order, and then they're worse than they were before. Jesus had just finished his discourse to his enemies here who accused him of actually casting out a demon of muteness out of a man so that man could now talk. They accused him of doing that by the power of the devil. Jesus told them that when someone stronger than the strong man enters the house, namely him, Jesus, attacks and overpowers him, he takes away from him all his armor on which he relied and distributes his plunder. Jesus is plundering Satan's house, namely people, and taking up residence in them. Look around you. You are the plunder taken from Satan's house in whom the Lord now lives. You're no longer a house of vice and iniquity for demons. Jesus was plundering all the souls in Satan's service and bringing them over to his side. As he said, he who is not with me is against me, and he who does not gather with me scatters. In verses 24 to 26 here in this block of text that we just read, it seems that Jesus is describing merely moral, personal reformation as opposed to the people he himself saves from Satan's grip. There's a name that all of you need to be familiar with. If you're not familiar with this, I can help you and give you some books or some articles. Charles Grandison Finney, one of the most important people in the entire history of our country and in all of Christianity. He said in his books, I used to read them long ago before I knew that he was actually a wolf in sheep's clothing. He said that the duty of all Christians is to become a social reformer, and that's all we are. We are agents of social reform, nothing more. Finney's false gospel was that you can go to heaven if you stop sinning. And for those under the conviction of the Spirit of God, that's not actually really good news, is it? But for the over 500,000 people who thought that it was good news, that's what the historians say, as many as 500,000 people eventually came forward at these altar calls and vowed to clean up their act. They outwardly cleaned up their act, yes indeed. Toward the end of his life, even Finney himself wrote about and lamented the total failure of his ministry to produce any lasting change at all. Yes, a lot of moral cleanup had happened where he had preached in upstate New York, but Finney was forced to admit that when he was at the end of his life, that there was now nothing but contempt in those places for the things of God. And that area where Charles Finney's revivals happened and all of the moral revolutions happened, it became known afterwards by historians, secular and Christian alike, as the, quote, burned over district, end quote.